Good evening, folks. All right. Well, we're in business here tonight, and as I said in an earlier video today, we're going to be talking about some interesting things here. Wait for all of you to tune in. All right. Well, welcome everybody. Welcome. It's nice to have you. I want to talk about some things tonight that, well, it's not exactly easy for me to talk about these things because it's rather disappointing. All right. I want to open up with a little bit of the word here. It's important. Anybody out there got a favorite verse? Besides John 3:16, we all know that Jesus Christ is the way, the truth, and the life, and no one comes to the Father but through him. But what we're going to talk about tonight is part of a massive deception, folks. And in the Bible, in Ephesians 6, it talks about what we face, and sometimes it's unbearable. In Ephesians 6, verse 12, it talks about, "For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places." We're not just dealing with bodies and bones and skin, folks. There are spiritual components to what we face. We're not just supposed to be concerned with physical protection. We're also to be concerned with spiritual protection, because one of the biggest ways that we are being destroyed is by spiritual deception. We're supposed to take the whole armor of God, folks, that we'll be able to withstand in the evil day. And let me tell you something, we're in the evil day right now. If any of you doubt that, turn on your television or listen to the radio or look at what's being advertised on the billboards. Look at these movies they're advertising. Look at the video games the kids are playing. Look at the lyrics in the songs. It says to take unto you the whole armor of God that you may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all to stand. That's what I'm doing. That's what we're doing together. Stand therefore, having your loins girt about with truth, and having on the breastplate of righteousness, and your feet shod with the preparation of the gospel of peace. Above all, taking the shield of faith, wherewith you shall be able to quench all the fiery darts of the wicked, and take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God. And pray always in supplication in the Spirit. It's the word of God, folks. Everybody see this? It's the word of God. Some people have a problem with this. Some people will never hold this up on camera and read out of it. We're supposed to have faith, and we're supposed to be ready to have an answer. And we're supposed to protect ourselves. The breastplate, right here, folks. The breastplate of righteousness. We're supposed to live clean lives. So we stand up, there's nothing they got on us. The shield of faith. What's there to be afraid of if we believe? You know, fear's a weapon, folks, and that's one of the major weapons of the enemy, is to get us afraid. If you are not afraid and you have the shield of faith, all the darts that come at you from the wicked people are not going to penetrate. Have your head donned with the absolute assurance of your salvation, so you're not afraid. Your mind is protected. Look, folks, this verse in the Bible is just one of many, and what we're under now is a massive deception. And I wanted to talk tonight, as I promised earlier, I want to talk about Alex Jones, because like a lot of you, he was an inspiration to me. You know, 20 some odd years ago, I used to listen to Alex Jones on the shortwave. I still have my Grundig Yacht Boy. I've got two of them. I had about 50 feet of wire strung in my pine trees at about 100 feet in the air so I could get these signals from all over the world. And he wasn't the only one I used to listen to on shortwave back in the day. It's before we had the internet. It's before we had a lot of things, folks. It's back in the day when we had a lot of freedom. And the freedom movement was just getting started. The patriot movement was just getting started. You know, back in the day, they weren't able to track and trace everything you did. You could freely assemble and talk to people. They didn't have the ability to tap all the phones, they track all your purchases. Well, they do now, and they knew this day was coming. And what they had to do, and when I say they, I'm talking about the people that are involved in being connected with these rulers of darkness of this world, the spiritual wickedness in high places that controls the thought process and the ideologies of our leaders. These are the people that have long-term plans, folks, very long-term plans. And everything they do is carefully crafted and methodically designed to go off without a glitch. And although a lot of what you are shown appears to be hiccups and bumps in the road, it's really all kabuki theater. It's all designed to get you to believe that things are unpredictable when in fact they're controlled. But I will tell you that we can have an impact, but not if we succumb to the deception. Back in the early 90s, I started questioning a lot of things because I came of age, and I guess you could call it a born again experience. When I became a Christian, things did not make sense to me that once did. I didn't understand a lot of things that once seemed normal and commonplace. And I started reading the lyrics of these record albums I had. I looked at the artwork for the first time and really looked at the artwork on the album sleeves. Now, I know some of you may have never seen a record album, but that's how music used to be distributed. And there was a lot of imagery, and the lyrics were always written in some place inside the album, in the sleeve or on the cover. And you could see the names of the production companies, and it was startling, folks. You know, it really was amazing to see how blind I was and how blind a lot of people are still. And it's not their fault. It's just that they haven't been willing to give their hearts to this. Because what this is a double-edged sword. It can be used to cut you and to make you see and to bring you to your knees to what you need to realize. And it can also be used as an offensive weapon against the spiritual forces that we face, folks. Okay. I'm going to speak up now because it's time to talk louder. And it's time to start talking about what's important. And that is that the media interests that have been controlling what the American people have been taught and what they're told to think and what they're told to drink, what they're told to eat, what pills to pop, who to date, how to dress, what to wear, what to spray on yourselves, how to wear your beards, and for the women, how they're supposed to carry themselves and what their idea of an ideal man should be. These people they're the controllers, folks. They serve Lucifer. And there are agendas to get conformity with the Luciferian agenda, which is the diametric opposite of God's plan for humanity. God's plan for humanity is eternal life and love and communion with Him. And He has put us here in this closed system under this dome that we live under. Yes, folks, you heard me. The Bible speaks of the firmament and the waters above the dome and the waters below the dome. And in this King James, the word firmament comes from the Hebrew word rakia, which speaks to the Latin Vulgate, which amounts to basically something that has been stamped out in terms of metallurgy. There's a solid roof on top of what we live on, and NASA's a fraud, folks. And we don't live on a spinning ball. And for those of you who want to write me off because I don't believe we live on a spinning ball, that is your prerogative. But this Bible is very clear in terms of the Hebrew and the Greek and the cosmology that it teaches. And when you have somebody who's a mainstream media operative like Alex Jones, who has the spinning globe as a logo of his operation, along with Universal Pictures and all of these other companies that are all in on this deception, you need to make up your mind to determine who you're going to follow. Now, back in the early 90s, it was great times because back then we didn't have cell phones. And if we did, they were big bricks that only business people had, and they were only used for important communications. And people talked to each other, and they looked each other in the eye, and it was a great time. The economy was still good. There was still plenty of opportunity to start a business. You could go out and buy a house. It was affordable. You could rent a place. It was affordable. Now the things have all changed because the stakes have been raised. The borders have been open. The economy has been destroyed intentionally by our leaders to put the pressure on us. Now there are water restrictions. There are travel restrictions. There are all this biometrics that have been implemented. You're being scanned everywhere you go, traced and tracked. But back then, we had a tremendous amount of freedom. And what was happening back then is there was a lot of people waking up to the fact that we were losing our freedom. You know, the government was involved in some really heinous things. When I look back at what happened to the Branch Davidian Church in Waco, Texas, and how they were firebombed and shot and exterminated, and when I look at what happened on 9/11, and when I look at what happened on many of these other things like Ruby Ridge and some of these other involvements with freedom fighting people, freedom loving people, people of faith that were demonized and treated as monsters and murderers by the media, when in fact they were not. And the official narratives have always been those that have left many questions unanswered, more so than those that were. And they needed people back then to corral and control the up and coming freedom movement because it was gaining a lot of momentum. And when I say a lot of momentum, I'm talking about people that were wide awake, that knew what was going on and knew what was up and had solutions and knew about the Uniform Commercial Code and knew about the Constitution and knew about how DC is all laid out masonically and it's a corporation, and knew about the income tax laws and knew about what the Second Amendment really said, knew about our roots and who controls the banking system and how to get out of all this matrix. Because back then the matrix didn't have the tentacles, but what they had to do back then is they had to get William Cooper out of the way. Because William Cooper at one point was on the inside and he turned into someone on the outside to expose the inside. And for that, he got a bullet in his back. And he had to be replaced. There was a guy years ago running on the shortwave circuit. There were shortwave radio wars back in the day. I remember because I used to switch back and forth between these stations depending upon the weather. And I remember listening to people like Bo Greitz and Bill Cooper and some of the other people that were on. Some of the best information and the best advice I ever got came from shortwave broadcasts that were being run from barn houses in places like West Decatur, Pennsylvania, where you could hear the cows mooing in the background, and these guys would be broadcasting with a car battery, telling the truth about everything, about how to protect your health and your family. And that's how I managed to figure out years ago, decades ago, about the eugenics programs that were in existence. And they continue today. But what they managed to do back then was they managed to get rid of Bill Cooper and replace him with someone they had total control over. And that was Alex Jones. You heard me. Alex Jones replaced Bill Cooper. That's a fact. And I was actually listening to Alex Jones' coverage of the Bill Cooper event that night. And I remember the moment when it was reported that he was shot. by the sheriffs. They had his house surrounded, and that was his last night on this earth. But that was the beginning of the changing of the guard. Some of you are going to accuse me of being divisive. Some of you are going to accuse me of harming the Patriot movement. But ladies and gentlemen, the Patriot movement has been neutered and neutralized, and it has been for quite some time. And I can tell you why. It's because the people that were being woken up were people of means. People that did not have enough money to run for office, did not have enough money to escape from the compact cities, that don't have enough money today to break free from the kill grid that's been erected all around us. But those are precisely the people that Alex Jones appeals to. The young people, and they think they have a leader that's going to save them. And what I want to talk about tonight is who this leader really is, or do we even know who he is? I've studied for some time, because of my suspicions, who Alex Jones is. And while I'm not sure, I do have my doubts that he is who he claims he is. And I do have my doubts as to how the YouTube algorithms have allowed him to do what he has done, and the syndication and the media presence that he has, in spite of the statements that he makes, is allowed to continue. Now, we know that at one point his camera crew admitted they worked for Time Warner. That's on film, that's on record. And we also know that a man named Bill Hicks has a lot of uncanny resemblances to Alex Jones. And Bill Hicks supposedly died in 1994 of pancreatic cancer. We also know that Alex Jones was an activist who emerged on the scene around the same time in the early 90s. And from a lot of the video and photographic evidence that I've seen, in 1997, it appears that the up-and-coming Alex Jones was replaced with what appears to be a surgically altered and a resurrected Bill Hicks, quite possibly financed by Ted Turner, to take control of the Patriot movement and run us in lockstep formation in circles. What do I mean by that, ladies and gentlemen? Well, look, folks, we're in a lot of trouble because the vast majority of us live in a situation where if they shut off the electricity, or if they shut off the water, or if they roll the troops, we have to do what they tell us. 25 years ago, if they would have shut off the electricity, or shut off the water, or rolled the troops, they would have had a real fight on their hands. But I can tell you today that they have made tremendous advances against our ability to maintain our freedom, because we have allowed them to. Because what we have done is we have allowed ourselves to live a vicarious existence through media persona that pose as our saviors, that wrap themselves in the American flag while they have a knife to our jugular behind our back. Now, is Alex Jones a CIA operative? Is he a CIA creation? Well, I can tell you that from what I have seen, it is deeply concerning, to say the least, that the presence of so much evidence that clearly, in my opinion, points to him not being who he says he is, just based on his age, appearance alone, and the uncanny, eerie resemblances to Bill Hicks, his dental features, his facial features, and some of the areas where it appears that he has had cosmetic surgery and moles removed. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that really doesn't add up, folks. Why is it so hard to believe that the CIA or the deep state or the international cabal that runs the media and the military industrial complex would not give us a doppelganger and bring back somebody who's already been primed, sealed, and then delivered to us, ready to roll, in a position to lead us around like the Pied Piper off a cliff? Why is that not out of the realm of possibility that somebody would fake their own death and come back with the help of the coroner and a plastic surgeon? Why is that such an impossibility to imagine when Alex Jones talks about false flags and fake shooting death victims all the time? Think about that for a moment. Is it out of the realm of possibilities to actually be the exact thing that he's made a living off of supposedly exposing all these years? I mean, he's made statement after statement about how nobody died in this event, nobody died in this event, and these were fake death certificates, or we can't get the death certificates, or these are fake people that never existed, or these people actually came back and you can find them at another event several years later as another casualty victim. I mean, he talks about that. He sits there telling, and you know what? Most people believe that this kind of stuff has taken place. So why is it that it's out of the realm of possibilities for us to believe that he is actually a Manchurian doppelganger? It's a possibility, folks. Am I telling you that that's the case? No. Am I asking you to investigate it? Absolutely. Because here's the deal. Here's the deal, folks. If that's the case, and I believe personally that I'm leaning towards the fact that I believe it might be the case, and everybody he's connected with is in on this too. All of them. Now, what does that mean? Oh, Lord, have mercy on us. Now, I've sat here and watched my YouTube channel lose 100 followers in a second when it was gaining several hundred a day, because I know how these machines and these algorithms and these sensors operate. You know, guys like me, they're going to allow me to have a limited audience, but guess what? You all have your own audience, and you could do with this information what you wish. But I will tell you that we need to be careful who we follow. And don't follow me either. You listen to everything I say and you investigate it for yourself. Don't you follow me like I'm some Pied Piper and I have all the answers. I'm just a frail, sinful, fallen human being that's been redeemed. And I have the humility to realize that I needed to be redeemed. As a result of that, I can see things. Because once your mind is free from the guilt and the filth, you can see the light. And you can see things for what they are. And when you look at an AC/DC album and you see a couple guys with horns in their heads and this thing is called The Highway to Hell, you won't sing along with that song anymore because you realize this is really scary stuff. So back to Alex Jones. You can't kill rats with strychnine or anticoagulant unless it's got some yummy nummy stuff mixed in with it so they'll start swallowing it. Okay? Now, Alex Jones over the years has had an amazing access to inside information. And that's a fact as well. And one has to question where he got that information. Now, if you take truth and mix it with fiction, all the while acting unstable, and never really committing to any absolute truth, at the same time, subliminally yet Orwellianly in your face, promoting the NASA fraud with his round earth logo, that should leave many people questioning. And I want to tell you something, folks. I keep getting back to this round earth, flat earth debate. And Nightline was so concerned, ABC was so concerned that they're re-airing something from 3 years ago about a flat earth convention. I mean, folks, here's the deal. I'm going to tell you something. Jesus Christ is the way, the truth, and the life. And when you go to the Supreme Court, you're going to see the Roman numerals 1 through 10 chiseled on the door. And in the Capitol, there's a memorial to Pocahontas, who was the first Indian convert to Christianity. And we've got the Magna Carta and the Mayflower Compact, and we've got the Ten Commandments, and we've got all this stuff literally written and interwoven into every aspect of our legal system and our laws. Unfortunately, it has been perverted and infested with masonry and mystery religion, Babylonian infiltration. And that involves the Jesuits, and it involves the Illuminati, and it involves the high-level people that have corrupted what many 250 years ago bled out in the snow and died for, thinking they were fighting for this. Ladies and gentlemen, we've never stopped fighting for this. We're still fighting for it. It's under attack. And the problem is they've put a hook in all your noses, and they've dragged you on a different path. I used to have a boat in my younger years, and those of you familiar with the California coast, there's an island called Catalina, about 28 miles just off of Orange County. And if you headed out, to the west and a little bit to the north, on a good clear day, you could go out there without a compass, and you could end up at where you needed to be to go catch the fish. That's what I used to do. I remember one time a fog rolled in after we had left in the morning, and I ended up halfway to Santa Barbara Island. Not that far out, but in that direction. I was that far off because I was off a few degrees because I wasn't going in the right direction. I was taken off my course by a few degrees, and I ended up in a place that I didn't want to be. Lucky for me, I knew the way back. But those of you in the freedom movement have been led for a long time away from the correct path on how to deal with what we face. And let me tell you what we face, folks. It's satanic. It's evil. And the only way to fight a spiritual battle is with spiritual truth. Not just weapons. We need to use spiritual weapons. That's right, folks. These are the days that will try men's souls. And people like Alex Jones are very questionable for a variety of reasons. His connections to the mainstream media and these media conglomeration corporations are very questionable. And what he doesn't talk about and what he does mock, in my opinion, are very indicative of who he is and who he works for, and ultimately who he's protecting. And he's certainly, by the looks of things, not protecting the average guy like you and I. You see, ladies and gentlemen, talking about these issues that we face isn't enough. We need to methodically and carefully figure out a way to defeat these agendas as they advance toward us. And yelling and screaming and calling people names and raising our voices and getting a bunch of young people pissed off and talking to each other about problems is part of the solution. But like those people who go to church and hear a great sermon and the pastor ends up stopping right there, and then the whole thing ends and everybody starts thinking about what's for lunch, that's what's going on with a lot of these talking heads in the conservative and patriot movement. Here's the deal, ladies and gentlemen. There needs to be a call to action. And the call to action does not mean you go into a Whole Foods restaurant with a bullhorn and start talking about all the GMOs on the shelves and making a fool out of yourself and yelling and screaming and creating some sort of a spectacle of yourself and then putting that on the internet and saying, see what I'm doing? No, this is what we do, ladies and gentlemen. I'll tell you what we do. We say no to everything that they try to force on us. And we lobby our elected officials to say no to these things. We educate our elected officials. We educate people who are making decisions. We inform everyone we can about everything we know. And we do it because we care and we love them. Not because we're crazy or we're intolerant or we're hateful, but because we have a genuine concern for the future of our country and the health and well-being of our fellow American. And that involves a lot of different involvement points. Issues with immigration, issues with water fluoridation, issues with wireless proliferation, issues with Common Core being rolled out in the schools, issues with sex ed being brought into the schools, issues with chemtrails, aerial spraying of chemical pesticides at the local levels, the weather modification programs, the phony space programs, the unjust criminal wars and all of the military-industrial complex's crimes, the child trafficking, the things involving pedophiles in our government. All of these things have Achilles' heels, folks. It's called the light of day and the truth. And all of these problems have solutions. And if we can't wake people up that are involved in creating these problems and propagating and promulgating the effects of these problems, then it's up to us individually to say, no, we're not taking the shots. You're not teaching my kids that. I'm not drinking this without filtering it. I'm not going to buy this product. I'm not going to watch these movies. I'm not going to pay this cable bill anymore. I'm not going to let my kid have a wireless gaming controller next to his testicles 10 hours a day so he can get testicular cancer before he even knows what it's like to make love to his wife. That's a fact, folks. These are issues. And when we have people like Alex Jones, who comes on the radio and yells and screams and makes all kinds of false and crazy statements and acts irrationally and goes on these rants and cusses and yells and screams and loses control of himself and puts out truth with disinformation on a regular basis and sensationalizes and operates in hyperbole and innuendo with a large following that is propped up by a mainstream media sponsorship, quite possibly under a complete false identity. That's very concerning. But it's not too late. It's not too late to solve our problems, folks. Because these people that everybody follow, these people that everyone is endeared to, they're just people. And followings can move and followings can change and directions of followings can change. I'll talk to you about things that you won't hear on Fox or ABC or CNN or NBC or whatever these networks are, because they're all in on this kill grid and they're all in on this dehumanization and they're all in on this spiritual deception and they're all in on this war against God and his son, Jesus Christ. And they're all in on the war against the truth. And the truth is, deceivers are many. The facts are evidently clear, folks. We've been lied to about everything. You know, I remember the first time I sat into a school classroom in 1972. And I remember that there was a globe on the desk of my teacher. And although I looked at it all the time, I really didn't understand what it was. And I noticed that every single time I changed classrooms, the teacher had a globe on their desk. And I remember spilling water as a child And I remember jumping into swimming pools, and I remember watching the water always seek its own level and always remain flat. And I always wondered how water stuck on a spinning ball, yet it supposedly does. And as a child, I wondered how a hummingbird could sit there and fly, and a mosquito could take off when I tried to swat it as it tried to bite me. But yet the oceans are stuck on a spinning ball that's doing 1,500 miles an hour. And when I get on a merry-go-round going fast enough, I want to fly off. I didn't understand it, folks, but you want to know something? I had to learn that stuff because they taught me that stuff. And you know what? Then I remember going to Catholic school, and they taught me that this was wrong because they made a joke out about how these people in the beginning wrote this stuff in here and they were mistaken about what we live on. You see, folks, the deception started very young, and it was reinforced by agents of the Vatican. The Jesuit order ran the Catholic schools. They still do. When I went to high school, at modern day high school in the 80s, I was thumbing through my yearbook years later and realized that most of the people that were in staff and administration were homosexuals. The priests were gay. A lot of the lay people that were there that were as employees were gay. And to be honest with you, when I was in high school in the 80s, I didn't even really have that register. It never even registered to me. Guys just like girls. But yet the school was full of these people. And there was molestation taking place with the principal. He was taking young boys, underage boys, up to the mountains on the weekends. And whether or not he was convicted is irrelevant because the diocese paid off millions of dollars to these children's families who were being taken up to the mountains and being molested. The deception was everywhere growing up, and I was oblivious to it. And so were a lot of you. But the reason I keep bringing up the shape of the earth is it's a huge part of the deception. And people like Alex Jones are in on it. While he may sit here and tell us that the moon landings may have been faked, and he'll give us bits and pieces of this huge conspiracy to kick God and discredit the Bible out of everybody's minds, as he puts his Prison Planet logo up there and that spinning ball front and center every time you go to his website or he comes back on from pitching his products that he's selling. This ball earth is embedded in his operation as well. He's part of the system. Now, why is this so important? Why is the ball earth scam such a big deal? Well, so many of you out there, maybe even listening to my voice right now, you may not believe in God because of what you've been taught. And to be honest with you, with enough schooling and enough pressure and enough rote repetition that's been rammed down your throats for 12 years through your compulsory education requirements, you believe there's no God. Well, guess who gets to be the king if you're all atheists? Lucifer. Because guess what? He gets your souls. Because you can't spend eternity with somebody you don't know, and you can't get to somebody you don't know if you don't know the way. And the way is his son, and you'll never believe in his son if you don't believe anybody ever made this stuff. And so what they've done is they've convinced everybody that we are on a spinning ball, flying through space at 5,000 miles an hour, spinning at 1,500 miles an hour, and everything's sticking to this thing like glue because of some magical force field called gravity. And that we coalesced from explosions of infinite years in time, and things have evolved into what they are based on random combinations of elements and electrochemical processes and chemical reagents that occur naturally by some random explosion of matter have turned into amoeba, protozoas, monkeys, squirrels, you and I, and Rolexes and BMWs and airplanes, right? No, how about computer printed circuit boards? No, come on, folks. You're not going to get an i7 computer chip with a liquid cooled fan system at the bottom of the ocean after 10 million years. It's not going to happen. There's a designer. And you know what? It's easier to convince people that there is no designer and no creator if they think that they've just happened to evolve out of a bunch of spinning masses of matter. But if people knew that they were living in a closed system that you can't leave, then they would question how they got there. Alex Jones is part of this deception. Alex Jones has been created. He is a creation of the media. He's a creation of the elite. And he'll give us some good information once in a while. And he'll have some good guests on once in a while. But you got to understand something. If Alex Jones is Bill Hicks, then that means everybody he's had on his show, including the guests he has on all the time, are all in on this. And they all know about it. And they're all covering for each other. Now, I personally am 52 years old. He's not in his 30s, folks. He looks like he's in his 50s. Something is wrong with his age. He does not look like he's supposed to be the age that he claims he is. That's a very big red flag. What he doesn't talk about is how you know who he is. When I am asked a question about who's controlling things, I will answer that question. When he's asked who's controlling things, he will not answer that question directly. He goes on and says, let me tell you a story. I've got this I want to tell you. When he has people on his show, like Charlie Sheen, who, by his own admission, lived with several women, going on drug binges, and setting the worst example for people, living this immoral, decadent lifestyle. And he's friends with Alex Jones. Now, whether this is a few years ago or not, you are known by the company you keep. You have these other people on his show. You had people like Pat Buchanan and these Jesuit, total Jesuit Vatican operatives. That's what these people were. That's right. And it's always a conspiracy about the New World Order. And he'll get Ron Paul on there. And we know Ron Paul's a Vatican operative too. He's a Jesuit operative. And Ron Paul, you know, he talks a great talk. And he had a great following. And it was interesting how, you know, he calls for an audit of the Federal Reserve. We don't need to audit the Fed. We need to end the Fed. But we know what happens when people try to end the Fed. Kennedy started printing United States notes. He got a bullet to the back of his head. Reagan was considering it, and kaboom. We know Abraham Lincoln was printing greenbacks. Look what happened to him. So, you know, here we go again. We have these same themes recurring. And, you know, JFK, we all hear about the JFK assassination. How many times has Alex Jones had people on his show talking about the JFK assassination? Has he ever had anybody on his show that talked about how William Greer shot John F. Kennedy in the throat with a dart gun and then turned around and shot him again? And let me ask you a question. That theory has been out there, that the driver did it. Have you ever heard that on Alex Jones? Why not? Let me ask you another question. If you were in the convertible with the president that day, driving through Dealey Plaza on that bright sunny morning, and your husband just had his head blown off by a sharpshooter from the 5th floor of the Dallas School Book Depository with the bolt-action rifle, would your reaction be to duck and hide yourself, or to get out of the car because you knew the shots were coming from inside the vehicle? That's a question I would ask, because I've asked that question. I've always thought about, why did Jackie Onassis get out of the car? And my instinct when I'm getting shot at, and believe me, I've had situations where I've been walking through a hail of bullets. I grew up in a part of town where there was gang activity, and I ducked. I didn't try to run away. I hit the ground. When you are being shot at, your instinct is to hit the ground. Why was her instinct to get out of the car? Because to get out of the car means she would have to climb up and over and out. It puts her in greater risk of getting hit. She knows something? Did she end up marrying the wealthiest man in the world at the time for a reason after the death of her husband? We'll never know. Will Alex Jones ever have anybody on his show that legitimately can sit down and have an honest conversation about the shape of the earth and what we truly live in? No. He makes fun of them, goes on, raving rants and interrupts. And it's these issues that are central to such important things that get the most of his derision and the most of his diversion. Is Alex Jones Bill Hicks? Quite possibly, folks. Quite possibly. And I'm here to tell you that the more I look into this, the more I think he is. Are we living on a spinning ball, or are we living on a flat earth that's enclosed by a dome? I'm here to tell you, folks, the more I research this, the more I believe that we're living on a flat earth enclosed by a dome. You have a show where you can reach millions of people. And if you don't tell the 100% truth, then you're working for the other side, folks. That's a fact. Now, the flat earth with the firmament is the truth, folks. We're in a closed system. And I don't care how many times you talk about the fact that, Stanley Kubrick, he filmed the moon landings in a studio over in England. Okay. But why did he do that? And why did they do that? And why did they have to fake them? Well, because that jalopy never made it up there. Because there was no blast crater on the surface of the moon where that supposed LEM landed and took off from. I mean, come on. Folks, if you look at that footage, it's a joke. But why did they fake it? Why did they militarize space after the nuclear testings were taking place in the atmosphere? Why are they blowing up nuclear bombs really high up? Why aren't we talking about this? Why do they not talk about this on Alex Jones' show? Why don't they talk about Operation Dominic and Operation Fishbowl? And why don't they? Here's the deal, folks. If you've ever gone to the FullertonInformer.com, which is my website, and by the way, subscribe to this channel if you're not a subscriber, because I'd really like you to get updates when I go live and talk about other things, not just this. But why, folks? Why is it? Why is it that when we have a huge conspiracy that involves trillions of dollars and massive federal and government entities all over the world, like the fake space program and the fake space station, and all these blue screen projects, a green screen project that NASA's got going as they take all our money, why is it that we can't put all this on the table and have someone like Bill Hicks or Alex Jones talk about this in a logical, concise, understandable format? Why does it have to be immediately ridiculed and mixed in with the kitchen sink and the chupacabras? And why is it that all these people that are all guests on his show are all connected to each other? Like this coast to coast guy, George Norrie. I mean, Art Bell, and okay, they've had some good times. I remember the last show Art Bell did before they took him off the air years ago. He was talking about how the birds were flying backwards based on the HAARP and the magnetic flips that they were doing on the wildlife. They took him off the air. That's what happens when he steps out of line, and then they replace him with George Norrie. And it's all about UFOs. Every night it's aliens and UFOs. You want to know something? We got bigger things to worry about than Bigfoot and chupacabras and aliens, folks. Because I'm here to tell you something. Unequivocally, there are no aliens. We're in a closed system, and it's all a big bunch of nonsense. There are spacecraft, and it's our stuff, folks. It's advanced technology, and it's the stuff that NASA has built with all the money they've stolen from their fake space program and their Black Ops budget. And let me tell you something about this advanced technology, ladies and gentlemen. It's weaponry. It's weaponry. Where do you think a lot of the weaponry that's being deployed and used on us right now came from? It came out of these government programs. Now, Alex Jones will talk about a bit here and a piece here and mix it up with something else here. And before you know it, it doesn't make sense. And then you're laughing at the flat earthers and calling them names. When in fact, this is a flat earth book. And we know that NASA is a Masonic, occultic, black magic, Hollywood deception operation. That's a fact. Where do we get all these Nazi scientists from Operation Paperclip? We put them to work and stuck a bunch of people in cubicles. Do you know how many of those rockets crashed? Do you really think that the space program was a success? Do we know what a fraud that NASA is? Maybe you work for NASA. Maybe you're in a cubicle. Maybe you look at computer screens and see pictures they want you to see. But here's the deal, folks. We got big problems. Because if they're lying to us about how we got here, and if they're lying to us about what we live on, and they're lying to us about who put us here, then they're lying to us about everything else. And if you have somebody that's lying to us about possibly who he is, then he'll lie to you about anything. That's fact. Trust is earned, ladies and gentlemen. Trust isn't cheap, and trust can be lost. The Bible, you may not like it, but you got to learn to love it. Because I want to tell you something. You are all going to die. Every single one of you. I don't care if you got Rockefeller blood in you or you are just a working stiff that is a nobody. We're all somebody because we were all created by God and we all have eternal life. And there are people that won't talk about that. And there are people like Alex Jones who will never publicly come out and say he's a Christian and that he is a follower of the Lord Jesus Christ and that the Bible is absolutely true. And he will not talk about people that don't believe this is true. He's part of the system. But is he Bill Hicks? I urge everybody out there listening to me tonight to look into that. I really want you to do the research. And I know a lot of you that follow my channel listen to him. Because quite frankly, when we're busy and we want to know what's going on, some people are going to turn on the television and go to the news station, not because they trust it, but because they know that that's probably the one place that if anything's happening, they're going to be talking about it. Well, Alex Jones or Bill Hicks or whoever he is that person for a lot of us. Now, is that something that we need to stop doing? No, because here's the deal. We need to keep tabs on these people and hold them accountable and put pressure on them to come clean and start telling the truth on things. I've spoken at length at public presentations on my website and done videos on what 5G is and what it does. And I've gone to great lengths to study it and expose it systematically and logically. And I talk about certain aspects of the coming 5G and the coming Y-gig systems. And I make it so that you can understand what I'm saying. And I don't have some picture of a skull and crossbones back here to divert your attention. I'm not on the left side over here with a guest who's going into a psychotic rant and grunting and groaning like a wild hog to distract from the message. And if I quote a source from something, I'm going to read it. And if it's on my website, you're going to see the picture or the article. I don't scribble pictures and confuse things and misquote people's credentials. But that's what they do on that show. That's what they've done with the information. They do that with a lot of things, folks, because you know what ends up happening? The Snopes fact checkers and the government operatives will then pick up the story and the statements and say, see, look at this. They said this, this, and this, and the whole thing gets thrown out. The baby goes out with the bathwater. And the credibility goes down the drain. The attention span continues to shrink of people. And the minute now you connect this person with that issue, that's all of a sudden ludicrous. That's part of propaganda, folks. That's part of mind control. That's how it's done. And there are a lot of people that have done a lot of good fighting and waking people up. And let me tell you something. Ted Turner would not have recruited Bill Hicks to become Alex Jones if he didn't think he was going to produce the results. And they weren't going to recruit somebody that wasn't going to be effective at garnering a large audience and being persuasive enough to maintain that audience. So we got the best they had. And who better to choose who to pick than someone who's been picking them all, and that's the guy that runs most of the media, Ted Turner, at the time. I believe Bill Hicks is Alex Jones. I believe that. That's my opinion. It's my belief. You don't have to believe that if you don't want to, but it is important that you understand something. That you understand the level of deception that we're facing and the sophistication and the utter efficiency and mesmerization ability of this deception by the controllers. And back in the 90s, it was good times. And they got out in front of this thing in a big way. And we've missed a lot of opportunity to stop this slide into tyranny and hell in this country. And it's a slippery slope, and it's going to be hard to get back up that thing because we've lost a lot of ground because Alex Jones or Bill Hicks or whoever he is has led a lot of us around in circles. Instead of calling us to action in ways that would have stopped this descent into tyranny, people just tune in and listen to him yell and scream and get mad, and that serves as a catharsis for their own frustrations. That's not the solution, folks. The solution is righteous indignation and prayer and telling the truth and standing up for the truth. You see, the biggest mistake that we ever made was allowing the churches to become what they are. And you saw what happened to David Koresh's church. You were told a lot of things about what went on in there, and we'll never know if they were true. But what we do know about the Branch Davidian Church in Waco, Texas, is that they were self-sufficient, that they were a community, that they were armed, and that they were Bible-believing Christians. And that is the model for a free society and a free people. And what did Janet Reno do to that model? They firebombed it, machine gunned it, and bulldozed it. Now, what did John Ashcroft in the Bush administration do with Indianapolis Baptist Temple? They didn't firebomb it, they didn't bulldoze it, but they confiscated it. You see, folks, the real power in this country is in the church. But when we have the patriot movement that has detached from God and his word and his body, then we will never have another 1776, because this country was born in the pulpit. You see, the Revolutionary War started with pastors taking off their robes, and underneath those robes were their uniforms. That is where we came from, folks. And where we are headed is a pine box if we don't wake up. And they're not going to have to fire a shot, ladies and gentlemen, because let me tell you why. Because between the time that Bill Hicks turned into Alex Jones and today, the decades later, they've managed to go from needing to take all our guns to now getting us just to sit in front of screens so they can kill us with the light frequency and the microwave radiation coming out of those systems. You know, I remember years ago listening to Alex Jones or Bill Hicks or whoever he is on shortwave, and I was fascinated with the commercials because they were interesting sponsors. And one of the companies that was advertising on Alex Jones's channel, I'll never forget, this was the Genesis Communications Network back in the 90s, early 90s, or maybe maybe 97, 98, 1997, 1998, they were advertising for kits to make a 50 caliber gun without any serial numbers. That's the kind of stuff that Alex Jones had as a sponsor on his show. And I remember the name of the gun. It was called the Monty Griffin BMG. At one point, you could have called up Alex Jones's show and ordered a kit to buy a 50 caliber gun without any serial numbers on it. And now, several years after this was going on, the feds got a hold of the list of all the people that bought those things. Let me ask you a question, folks. What did that accomplish? You see, while all this was going on and while everybody was worrying about them coming for the guns, Alex Jones never talked about something that was taking place. And he knew all about it. It was called the Telecom Act. The Telecom Act was signed by Bill Clinton, and that was the death sentence of humanity. Because that document, that piece of legislation, tied the hands of all local and municipal control over the placement and siting of weaponry that now has found its way into every neighborhood in the form of these towers that are now ubiquitous. And because of this Telecom Act, it was allowed to have been passed with virtually no opposition because nobody knew about it, because the mainstream media made sure nobody knew about it. Now we're facing a new derivative of the Telecom Act being foisted on us right now, which is the coming 5G systems, which are the airport scanner frequencies, which are millimeter wave frequencies, which are military grade style weapons frequencies that are going to be on every light pole and telephone pole in every neighborhood right outside your door, beaming at your house. You see, folks, because of the controlled opposition and the sleight of hand of the mind controllers that run Hollywood and the media, they've managed to get you to hold on to something that, although it's important to own firearms, it's biblical as well, because Jesus Christ on his last night on earth advised his disciples, if they don't have a sword, to sell their cloak and buy one. And that was a military style weapon at the time. And I'm not advocating violence, folks. I'm advocating self-defense against any oppressive act by an intruder, an invader, or a tyrannical government that turns on its people. But the point I'm making is that we had 20 years to fight the encroachment of this silent weaponry grid that they've now gotten full access to put in. And they've been given carte blanche the whole time to continue to write more laws, strip mining our ability to say no to this stuff. And now we're going to be forced to live in the Hunger Games, because the controlled opposition never led a systematic approach to undoing this offensive onslaught against fertility and human health. Because now what's coming are systems that are going to kill you very slowly but very efficiently. And all he can do now is yell and scream and rant about it, when he had 20 years to tell you it was coming, and he had 20 years to tell you how to stop it, and he never did. And the whole time, he had you watching the red herrings, and he had you wound up like a spinning top, spinning around, off balance a little bit, wobbling this way, wobbling that way, while over here, a systematic, methodic course was plotted to create our demise. That is a fact, folks. And now we find ourselves enslaved by debt, riddled with disease, addicted to our devices, with children who are walking around as a pediatric pincushion full of vaccinations, full of nanotechnology, sterilants, IQ-reducing hormones, and Logan's Run type ticking time bombs that have the potential for wireless activation, gene frequency manipulation. It's there. We've arrived. The kill grid is almost completely in place. And for 20 years, he's been talking about fighting the New World Order with the info war. Let me tell you something, folks. You don't fight the New World Order with the info war. You fight the New World Order head on with the word no and getting involved and systematically forming committees of correspondence to undo legislation, to convert churches into bastions of truth, to call out the crooked pastors. Instead of having everybody listen to one person rant and rave about how everything's going to hell in a handbasket, all that collective energy could have been funneled into different places to take out the different elements and legs and arms and tentacles of these agendas that are now converging on us. We have forced vaccinations in the state of California. We have forced irradiation in the state of California. We have forced water rationing in the state of California. We have forced indoctrinations in the state of California. We have forced gun control in the state of California. We have incredibly high forced taxation in the state of California. And California is the model. What are the solutions to all of this? And if you have a child, don't immunize that child. Say no. What are they going to do? They're going to tell you you can't put your kid in school. Can I ask you a question? What's good in a public school? Do you know what they're teaching those children? Do you just want to dump your kid off because he's a byproduct of some sexual fantasy one night and you like the child support money or the welfare money you're getting? Because if that's the case, don't listen to me. But if this is your flesh and blood and you know it's your progeny, your posterity, and your future, then look yourself in the eye and ask yourself, why am I sending my child to a school that's teaching him how to be gay, how to have anal sex, how to question whether his parents are right about anything, and how to do math that makes absolutely no sense, and the whole time he's got to sit in a classroom with an iPad on his reproductive organs or her reproductive organs, sterilizing them. And they needed to have 65 vaccines just to get into that room, to sit under fluorescent lighting with tinted windows and the doors and windows all sealed shut as an air conditioning system recirculates air with 35 children in there, some of which just crossed the border and are carrying tuberculosis and other resistant strains, with no sunlight, chocolate milk for breakfast, high fructose corn syrup in the lunch, and blue screens for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, folks. Learning a bunch of lies and revisionist history and being taught to be slaves. If that isn't enough to convince you to say no to the vaccines, disconnect from this channel right now. Now, say no. Homeschool your kids. Do something. Leave the state. Find a medical exemption. I'm telling you right now, folks, the solution is not to get mad and then throw your hands up and start smoking pot and drinking. That's not the solution. But if you watch enough Bill Hicks or you watch enough Alex Jones, that's what you're going to do. Because the truth of the matter is, the solutions are not being offered by the very people that you would expect and rely on to provide them. I just gave you a solution to a very complex problem. Do you know how many children have been destroyed by vaccinations? Do you know how many lives have been impacted by vaccine-damaged children? Do you know the cost this has provided, the cost that is being borne by the population and the taxpayers and society? It's a tragedy, and it's one that is based on a lie, because we're told that vaccines are safe and effective. Let me tell you something, folks. That statement's a lie, and I can tell you why it's a lie. And I will tell you conclusively, and I can prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that that statement is a lie. They tell us the vaccines are safe and effective. Did you know that vaccines have never been tested for impairment of fertility, have never been tested for mutagenic potential, have never been tested for carcinogenic potential? Have you ever heard that statement on Bill Hicks or Alex Jones? Have they ever shown you the vaccine inserts to say that? They should have been saying this for 20 years, folks, because the reality is, for as long as they've been on the air, they've known about this. How about this other issue that we face right now? How about the wireless exposure that's being forced on all of us? There are thousands of studies on the dangers of microwave radiation. And I will tell you that for 20 years, there has been no discussion about this issue. It hasn't been until recently that this has made the news. And that's because, in large part, there are activists out there like myself and others who have raised the alarm on this. Now, what's the solution to that? Well, you can hardwire your house, and you don't have to send your kids to a classroom that's got 35 iPads humming away and irradiating the children. You shouldn't send your kids to a place with a TV set in their hand all day. It's just not good. It doesn't make any sense. These microwave emissions are weapons, folks, and the new generation that's coming out is weaponry. This 5G stuff is a kill grid. It's a surveillance matrix and a kill grid all wrapped into one. Is it being presented as that in a logical way on Alex Jones' show? I don't know. Because the one time I've tuned in, every so often he's yelling and screaming and going to break and selling Tangy Tangerine and all these other things, when in fact, there are many solutions to this 5G issue. One of which is to plant tons of trees. One of which is to expose what this stuff is all about to your county commissioners and to tell your neighbors about it and to tell your councilmen and your county supervisors about it and your state representatives about it, and go visit your legislators and try to get through to these people. Because there are some that are human beings, folks. I know them. I know some personally that are not sold out. There are good people in elected office, but there are more bad ones. You know why? Because the crooked churches are part of the problem. That's why. So we have abilities, all of us, different talents, different gifts. But the one thing we can't do is just sit on the couch and let somebody fight this battle for us, because it's not going to happen. The common method of controlling the masses is to get everybody to rally behind an iconic person and then delegate all the responsibilities to that individual, and then have that individual be working as controlled opposition. I believe that's what's being done to us with Alex Jones. I believe he is controlled opposition. I believe he has been for some time. And I believe the moment that they turned Bill Hicks into Alex Jones is when that process began. And like I said, Ted Turner doesn't hire idiots, if indeed he was hired and created by Ted Turner and his media empire. But here's the reality. Now we have to look at what he's become and what he's doing. And as of late, he needs prayer. That I can say. Matter of fact, we all do. I think tonight I've said enough. And I want you all to do your homework. And I want you to realize that fear is their weapon. And to be honest with you, we don't have anything to fear. And to be perfectly honest with you, those evil people fear us more than you can imagine. That's their greatest weapon. And there are a lot of fearmongers out there, folks. I'm not one of them. I'm not going to tell you the world's going to come to an end, because I don't believe it is. The world is going to continue like it has. And the quality of life and the type of lives we live are going to be a function of our involvement in it for others. We need to fight for other people that don't know what's going on. We need to tell people the truth, even if they don't want to hear it. That doesn't mean we walk up to somebody and hit them over the head with this. What we do is we tell them, look, what you're doing is hurting you, and it's hurting other people. And did you know that it's being done to you on purpose? And there are people that are doing this to you on purpose that enjoy watching you go through what you're going through because it's part of a ritual. What is happening to humanity is a ritual, folks. This is all a ritualistic system we live in. And it is all a stage that they have set. And the players have the lights on them. We have a very narrow window to reach people. The fact that we're having this communication right now freely, uncensored, is miraculous. Because number one, we can reach thousands and thousands of people using their surveillance medium. It's amazing we have this window of opportunity, and we need to utilize it to its fullest potential. First and foremost, what must come of any information you get from me, that is the gospel of Jesus Christ must be at the forefront of what we do. Because he who is in us is greater than he who is in the world. And the devil is on death row, folks, and he's going to stay there. And all of the people that follow him are going to follow him. And they're going to end up there as well. People perish for a lack of knowledge. And I urge everybody out there that listens to me on a regular basis to dig deep and to look at the information that I'm alleging. And that look into how what I allege fits together into the big scheme of things. And look at how what we all can do to collectively make this a better place. It's never too late to do the right thing. And if you think your life's a mess and you've screwed up too bad and you think you're irreparable and you think God's not going to take you back, I got news for you. I know people that have broken every single one of the 10 commandments, ladies and gentlemen. And they can be forgiven. And so can you. As far as Alex Jones goes, who is he? Time will tell. Is he Bill Hicks? I honestly hope he is. You want to know why? Because Bill Hicks was a funny guy, and I sure hope he didn't die the death they said he did. Because if Alex Jones is Bill Hicks, that's really cool, because that means Bill Hicks is still alive. This is Joe Imbriano, folks. Fullerton Informer, coming to you from Orange County in the name of Jesus Christ. And may we go in love and peace to serve the Lord and our fellow man.